very briefly what I shared last week. You know, I was the youngest of 8 kids. We had no God in our lives. There was nothing. You know, we were atheists. There was no God. We just lived. And met Jim. And when I met him, I was 17. I had just graduated from high school, and he had been engaged for 2 years. And the day I met him, he had been engaged for 2 years. I want you to know this is Carol's ring.
Carol's ring?
Are you kidding me? You broke up and
Oh yeah, 3 months later we were married,
3 months.
baby. I told you this was an interesting story.
Sweet
But he was
Caroline.
raised Catholic. He was raised Catholic.
Got married in a fever.
We got married in a fever, baby. And we didn't tell anybody for a month.
Or Carol.
Carol never came in the picture again. She was gone. As soon as he
no show.
met me, that
You are so cute. Who
But
would have
anyway,
figured?
we ended up not telling anybody for a month, and then a month, when we were married 2 months, he broke his back. Spent almost the first we got married in August. He broke his back in October, and he was in the hospital till the following February, and that's how we started our life. You know,
It
and
was
so,
a harbinger of things to come.
yeah, and so our whole life, we lived on the edge of poverty, but I was this scraper that made it through. And then in the
And you had a little help from God.
yeah, but I didn't know it then.
I know.
I wasn't aware of him at all. He didn't get any part at all. But it was just
Scrimp and
scrape. And so we ended up, I became a Christian in 1971 and didn't know another Christian, didn't go to church, but God reached me in the depths of whatever woods I was in back in Ohio.
But how? Who told you?
Well, in 1970, I decided that maybe my kids should learn something about God, because I sure didn't meet him.
Oh,
No.
no.
And so
But
I-
children do.
Yeah, so I decided we would start going to this church, you know, and so we did, and God took, and it was a dead church. It was deader than a doornail. There wasn't nothing going on there at all. But he took the scripture that they used, and he worked on my heart. And the neighbor next door, to make this long story that took me an hour and a half last week, he led me to the Lord. And he never went to church, but he was a Christian.
He knew Jesus.
He knew Jesus.
But tell them how resistant you were.
Oh, well,
Oh, we know you.
yeah.
Did you
We
kick
know
the
you're
guy
resistant.
out?
Well, I stopped there to see if he was okay, because he had been in the hospital, and I went over to see if he was okay, and I'd been crying and crying because I was trying to satisfy God, and obviously you can't do that. So when I walked in, he said, "Well, honey, what's the matter?" And I said, "No, there's nothing wrong. I just came to see if you were okay, see if you needed anything, you know." And he says, "No, everything's fine, but you don't look like you're okay. You look like you've been crying. Now, honey, what's the matter?" I said, "Tell me, you can tell me." And I said, "Well, it's this God thing. You know, we started going to church, and I keep trying to do what God wants me to do, and I just can't do it. You know, I mean, I just can't do it." And he said, "Well, have you asked Jesus into your heart?" And I said, "No." He says, "Well, that's what you need to do. Just pray right now and ask Jesus to come in your heart." And I said, "I don't know how to do that." And he said, "Well, then I'll say the prayer and you just follow me." And I says, I don't like praying out loud." "Well, then just say it in your mind. Just say it in your mind." And so I said, "Okay." So he said the prayer, and I repeated it in my mind. And after we got all done, he said, "Now you really need to share with someone that you had asked Jesus into your heart." And I went, "Listen, Ray, you do your religion your way, I do my religion my way. I don't talk about it, okay? It's just the way it is,
Not
you
like
know."
your start.
And so then I went walking home and I thought, you know, man, I feel pretty good, you know. I haven't felt this good for a long time. I really, and all day long, you know, I'm thinking, wow, I feel good. Oh, I feel good. So that night we had choir practice at the Dead Church.
Yeah, I love
And
it.
this friend of mine says, wow, you look really happy. And I said, yeah.
You mean you were singing in the choir?
Oh, I was doing everything. I was the head of the youth group.
Oh,
As
God.
soon as we came there, they made Jim a
The dance,
deacon.
leading the
Oh,
dance,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, this place was deader than a doornail.
They needed anybody, didn't they?
And so she said to me, well, you look really happy. And I said, well, I am. She said, well, what are you happy about? And I said, well,
Go.
I have a new friend. And she said, really? Do I know him? And I said, well, I hope so. And she said, well, who is it? And I went, Jesus. And when I said Jesus, the Holy Spirit just went, whoosh, it just covered me and filled me. And
Aw.
it
Wow.
was so awesome.
Oh,
It was
I
so
love it.
awesome that there was no doubt in this mule-headed mind of mine that God had done a job. So
God.
that's how we started. So we're gonna jump up ahead a little now, and we found a church, a Bible church back in Ohio, and we decided we were gonna go on vacation. Just 2 years later, we were gonna go on a vacation, which we had never had a vacation. And we decided to come to Arizona, and there was a veterinarian at our church that knew a veterinarian here, John Ralston.
of course.
And he said, well, I said, I'd like to go to church while we're there. And he says, well, go to this church, Camelback Bible Church, and go find this John Ralston. So we did, and we met John. And the youth pastor was so dynamic.
Is that George? Which one? George Wood?
Yes. And they
I love
came and
him.
took, our son was with us. We only took my brother and Jim, and my son and I were on this vacation. And they came and picked up David at that time was probably about 16, took him tubing down the Salt River, the youth group.
Oh.
We were there visiting on vacation.
Wow.
And so that planted the seed of where we were supposed, for the future, So we went back home and we were all gung ho because Jim felt so good out here. And we decided that we would put our house on the market. And so we did. We put our house on the market. We had lived there for 15 years or so
Where was that?
in Ohio. We had a house out in the country, 7 acres. So.
Mhm.
little house.
But I'm
Yeah.
glad you came here,
Yeah.
because that's how I met her, was in Camelback.
Yeah. So anyway, we all this is about God. See, this isn't my story. This is when they
We
asked
knew
me
that.
when they asked me to share. I said, "What do you want?" I asked myself, "What do you want them to know about you?" And what I want you to know about me is what God has done in my life. That's what I want you to know about me. And so we went back home from our vacation. We put our house on the market because we decided we needed to live out here. Jim felt so good when he was out here. And it didn't sell. And so we lowered the price, and it didn't sell. And we lowered, on and on and on. And we finally looked at each other and went, do you think maybe God does want us to sell our house? You think? Honestly, that's how stupid we were, And so we determined, because we were brand new Christians, we hadn't learned how much you could trust God, And so we decided that we would just take our house off the market and trust God, whatever, that it would be okay, And so it turned out we started a bus ministry back there. We were so involved in that church, and we grew so much. And we were able to buy the house next door. I mean, mind you, we never had any
With
money.
nothing.
We never had money.
That's why I love Joyce's story, all the real estate that she bought with nothing.
Yeah, but we had bought our original house, and we had enough equity that they would let us have a loan on this house because of the equity that we had in the first one, see? So we bought it and rented it out, and we just went on our merry way. Well, then in 1975, my best friend moved out here, and she invited us to come out over Christmas. So we came out here over Christmas and just had a blast while we were out here. Had such a wonderful time, and we were driving. We had all our kids with us, and we were driving a van, and when we went back to Ohio, it was like we crossed the state line, and it was gray. Everything was gray, you know. I'm going, oh, I don't want to go back there. It was so beautiful in Arizona. God, I don't understand this, you know. And the people that had been renting our house next door had told us that they were going to be moving. They told us way in advance. They were lovely people. And we knew we would have to rent the house when we got back. So we determined that this was the way it was, you know, so we were going to rent the house. And Jim wasn't working at the time. He was not able to work then for that period. And it happened a lot in our marriage, you know. And
Was that back an ongoing problem?
oh,
Always.
always,
Yeah.
always. He was in so much pain all the time. But anyway, had to get a full-time job then, so he was home and I was working. And that following Monday, we decided to put an ad in the paper to rent the house. And so, and I came home and from work that night, and I said, did you get any calls on the house? He says, well, actually, I think I sold it.
Oh my gosh.
I said, what?
God, it's so cool.
Why would you sell that house? Why would you do that? He said, well, we had paid $21,000 for the house. You know? And he said, well, these couple came out to look at it and they were gonna rent it. And then the guy said, would you be willing to sell it? And I said, I thought back about when we were gonna sell the house before, and I thought, you know, if this is God, then there won't be any questions. And so I said to the man, well, I want $36,000 for this house. And if you decide to buy the house, I don't want any real estate, I don't want any, whatever it is, I want a check for $36,000 in my hand. If there are any costs, if there's any improvements that have to be done, they're all out of your pocket. Well, however you want to work the numbers, I want $36,000 in my hand. And I went, who would do a deal like that, Jim? He goes, I figured if God's gonna do it, you know, he's gonna do it.
Oh wow, I love it.
3 weeks, we had the money in our hand.
Wow.
And so we looked at each other and we said, do you suppose God's saying
Moving us?
it's all right to go to Arizona?
I think so.
And Jim said, well, here's the thing. We're not going to do what we did before. We're going to put this house on the market for 1 month. And if it's God's will that we go to Arizona,
It'll sell.
the house is going to sell. And I said, okay. So we put our house on the market for $36,000.
So you sold both of them for $36,000.
That Sunday,
Lucky them.
on Monday, Jim signed the papers for the house. Just put the house on the market and the realtors, and he says, I only want to list it for 30 days. She said, well, we don't do that. He says, fine, I'll get another realtor. She goes, but 30 days isn't enough time to sell it. He said, we are only listing the house for 30 days. Either you want the listing or I'll find another realtor. It's as simple as that. If it's gonna sell, it's gonna sell. And she said, okay. So that was on Monday. On Sunday, the realtor called up and they had 3 couples that wanted to see the house, and we were so involved in everything at our church, which was 17 miles away from our house. And he said, go ahead and take the kids and pick up the other kids and for youth group on Sunday night, and I'll just stay here. So we did, and I came home from church that night, and I said, so, did you sell the house? He goes, yeah.
I just love it. God is so great.
I said, Jim,
Don't
Don't mess with
me.
me.
don't
Yeah.
mess with me. This is really important. Don't tease me. He goes, it's sold. I don't believe it, Jim. I don't believe it. He goes, I'm telling you, it's sold. And so, I mean, it was just so miraculous that he would take. It had to be God.
Of course.
It had to be God. You know, it was God saying, I got this. I got this. I got this. And so the deal all went through. I'm cutting a lot of stuff off here, but the deal all went through. And and we decided that Jim would, and my oldest son, who had just graduated from high school, would come to Arizona first and find us a place, rent a place for us, see if they could find jobs. And then we would wait till school was out. That was another stipulation, was selling that house in March.
You had to stay till school was out.
In March. Buyers had to agree that we could stay till June.
Wow.
Just finish school.
You asked for the moon and got it.
Yes, yes. And so Jim came out here and rented a house over on the west side, and I was in charge of getting rid of everything.
Of course.
Everything. I mean, we didn't use movers. We took the possessions of Jim and I and 5 kids, and whatever we could fit in the biggest U-Haul trailer is what we brought out here. That's all.
Mhm.
We got rid of everything. Everything.
I love it.
We had to get rid of our horse. We had to get rid of everything. We brought our dog and our cat with us. But other than that, everything, we gave up everything. And so we sat down and we wrote God a letter. Somewhere in my stuff is a letter to God that Jim and I wrote to God. And we said, we thanked him for the selling the houses, and we said, if it's your will for us to move to Arizona, then we ask that you would find him work, that you would find us a place to live. We ask that you would take care of all the details, and we signed that letter. Okay. Jim left. It was probably April, the 1st of April, that Jim left to come out here and rented a house on the west side. So then he came back in June. Now, I wasn't going to do this, but I decided I'd do it anyway. My daughter just graduated from high school at this time. And on my 80th birthday, they made me a remembrance book. And I'm going to read you what she wrote in my remembrance book, because it's about this time of our lives, you know. Jim came back, and Susan wrote in my book, my favorite all-time memory is of my mom and dad. I was a senior in high school. Dang, now I'm a senior in life. My dad had arthritis so bad he was in the hospital all the time. So Mom and Dad decided to move to Arizona so Dad would not suffer so much. Dad moved to Arizona in about January or February, and Mom stayed home in Ohio with us kids until school was out. In June, Dad arrived from Arizona to move us. The first thing he did was scoop up my mom in his arms, holding her so tight and giving her this long kiss. Then he grabbed her face in his hands and said, "We will never be apart again." Holy crap, what love. I aspire to find that kind of love in my life. They never were apart again. They have said their last goodbye, but not their last hello. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful?
It is.
All right, thanks for making us all cry.
So cut to the chase here again. We get in our vehicles and move to Arizona, you know, and we're used to being out in the country 2.5 miles off the highway, and I mean country kids, you know. And
Bumpkins.
he bumped us, he smacked us right down in the middle of the west side over there. I'm telling you, it was horrible. It was so horrible. People in the neighborhood had chickens that crowed in the morning, and it was horrible.
You should have felt right home.
No,
Yeah,
we
I'm
had
kidding.
chickens.
Oh.
But
That was
anyway,
here in Arizona?
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it was over on 43rd Avenue in Osborne.
Those
and-
chickens
Oh.
still run down.
Yeah.
They're still down there.
So I got a realtor, and she took me to look at houses. And the first house I went to look at, I got out of the house and I walk in the house. Everything is brand new, carpeting brand new, walls all painted, fireplace, a pool in the backyard, mother-in-law suite. And I turned around and I looked at her and I said, "How much is this house?" She said, "It's $52,800. I said, "How much did I tell you I wanted to spend?" She said, "Well, you said 40,000. I said, "Okay, here's the deal. You either take me to see houses that are $40,000 or I get another realtor, because if you take me to a place like this again, you will be fired. I will not go to another house that's out of my range again. I will not. I cannot afford to waste time. It's July. I've got to be in a house by September when my kids go to school." By the way, I told her it had to be around Camelback Bible Church. That was our only point of reference in Arizona, was
Yeah.
Camelback Bible Church.
Which is not a cheap area.
I knew that they had a good youth group there, and my kids would have a good church home, so we
Yeah.
put God right smack dab in the middle of all of our plans and made him the focus of what we wanted in our lives, you know. 1,000 houses later,
No.
she
Oh
said,
my gosh.
"You keep coming back to that house on Hazelwood. Why don't you make them an offer?" I said, "Because they would be so insulted if I offered them $40,000 on a $52,000 house." She said, "It doesn't cost anything to make an offer." She said, "This house has been sitting here empty since March,
Ooh, that's when.
when we wrote the letter."
Waiting.
Okay. God,
It's been
Had
sitting
his
here
hand on it.
empty. These people are out of the country. They had rented this house out. They were tired of renting it out. They completely renovated everything in it, and they want to sell it. Cut to the chase here. We're gonna make this long story real short. We got down to within $700. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, within $700. And they wanted, I can't remember what it was now, 44 something. 44.2 or something like that. And they countered offered, and Jim said no. He says, no, that's it. No, every single time we had counter offered them, he had argued with me that we were going against what God said. We told God this, and we are going against what God said. And he fought me every step of the way, and we got to that last $700, and that man would not budge. He would not budge. I was so upset with him. I wanted that house.
was
so
that the
bad.
man that held your face and kissed you?
The same one.
Oh.
He was afflicted.
So I called the realtor back, and I'm crying on the phone. I'm going, "He will not budge. You'll have to come and get me tomorrow, and we have to look at more houses, you know." I hung up. She said, "Okay." I hung up the phone, and 15 minutes later, she called back. She said, "They'll take it."
Oh my
Praise the
goodness.
Lord. Praise the Lord.
I love that.
Now,
Kinda needs.
cutting off a whole lot of stuff here again. We lived there 23 years.
Kissing Arcadia.
Our kids went to Arcadia High School. We had a good home and a good life there, and a big house where we had room for family and parties and pool parties for the kids. And I mean, it was perfect. God did perfect. And we sold that house for $245,000 after we lived there
That's great.
for 23 years. And so that's the end of this beautiful story, right?
No,
Not.
not.
When we were going to Camelback Bible Church, we got involved with the group called the Baptist Foundation of Arizona because they did church loans. And they were in business for 52 years, you know. So we had invested with the Baptist Foundation. So we took the money, part of the money, and Doris Pullis went to church here. Remember Doris?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I was telling her we wanted to sell our house, so she said there was a house for sale across the street from her. She was pretty sure that they were gonna sell it, but it was a fix-up. And so I talked Jim into putting our house on the market, selling it, and buying this house across from Doris. And he said, oh no, it needs too much work. No, you won't have to do anything, Jim, I promise.
I'll do it
We'll
all.
have enough work, we'll have enough money out of the house from Hazelwood, we'll pay for everything. So we bought the house for $88,000,
Wow.
invested the rest of the money in the Baptist Foundation, and 10 days after we invested the money, they went bankrupt.
Whoa.
Do y'all
So the
remember
person who
that?
What
took
year
your
was
money
that?
already knew that,
99.
right?
Oh, yeah,
The person
that
who
was
took
such
your money
a.
already knew
Yes,
it.
and we asked them, because there'd been talk on in the New Times or something, you know, and what is going on here? And she goes, you know, they do this all the time, you know, but this place, we've been in business 52 years. It's a safe investment, you know,
That's what
and we
so
lost
many people lost money.
everything. We lost everything we had.
No, you didn't, you still had the house for 88,000.
Yeah, a house that was not livable.
Oh.
You couldn't live in it. But guess who worked it all out?
Maggie.
God.
Guess who worked it all out?
Can't
You know,
be
and
God.
I was,
Did Jim hug and kiss you then?
he wasn't hugging and kissing anybody, honey. He was so angry. He
You're
was,
so concerned
he
about
was
this
so
guy who kissed
angry.
her.
And I was so angry.
Well, but you know what,
I know,
Joyce, but I
I hear you.
remember early on when I met you, right after that thing you went, you told me, and it really touched my heart. You said, you know, the Baptist Foundation took my money, but they're not gonna take my joy.
Yeah, see, I had planned
Amen.
our plans were laid out very carefully. I never did anything without planning. And my plan was all laid out. I was gonna retire, Jim and I were gonna travel, we were gonna put this money in, we were gonna have a check out every month to supplement our income. I had it all planned out.
Oh, yeah.
And so when this didn't work out, I was not able to retire. I couldn't. I mean, we couldn't exist. And I hated my job. My job was very, very physically demanding, and I hated it. And I couldn't retire. And so I'm driving to Tempe in rush hour traffic every morning, and one morning I'm driving and I'm crying while I'm going down the freeway. I'm so upset because I didn't want this job. I didn't want this existence. I didn't want Jim and being so angry. I didn't want the house that was a complete total wreck. And we prayed, God. We prayed together. Jim and I prayed together if this was the right thing to do with this money. How could you do this to us? How could you allow this to happen? And all of a sudden this light bulb went off in my head. And that's when I said, are you going to let them take something else away from you? It's only money. It wasn't your money to begin with.
Amen.
It was God's. He did it all. You've always said he did it all. So why are you so worried that he's going to take it and use it some other way or do some other thing with it? You are safe. You are loved. You've got God in your heart, and there isn't anything that can touch you. Nothing. And you're not going to let him take your joy. You will not. Every time you think about that money, I want you to think about
Praise
the
the
Lord.
Lord.
Every time you think about it, you think about the Lord. And that's what I did. And so we ended up, we just got a line of credit on the house because it was paid for, and proceeded to gut the house and fix
Make it
it up.
livable.
And now guess what? It's worth probably close to 3.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, and money just doesn't do it. Money doesn't do it. You know, you can have.
It can sure upset your apple cart though if you think it does.
Can if you let it. Yeah. It can if you let it have control, you know. So that's, I think I covered all that I wanted to tell you about, because it wasn't just enough to tell you that God made me a Christian, because he has worked. Maybe everybody feels this way.
No, everybody
Maybe.
doesn't get their Joyce.
Maybe everybody feels this way, though, that God has made them so special. You know, that he's just taken every little bump and everything, and he's made it so beautiful. You know, I can't think that everybody feels that way. I think it's something so special. And I was thinking about this morning what I was going to share with you guys, and I was thinking everything I thought about sharing, it was like God was saying, I got this. Joyce, I got this. I got this.
So I was telling Joy on the way, I was telling her about a real estate